joining us live on YouTube. I am Josh Bazan. I am the Forest Hill School District Communications Coordinator. This is a live presentation and Q&A with our Superintendent of Forest Hill School District, Larry Hook, and our Treasurer, Alana. The purpose of this meeting tonight is to provide some factual information so folks in the community can make an informed decision on May 2nd when the 6.9 mil combination levy is on the ballot before voters. So we will start. I will turn it over to Superintendent Larry Hook first, and he will kick us off with a brief presentation before we go into any questions folks might have. If you have questions as this video is live, you can submit them to the email address that's at the bottom of the screen. And if you're watching this recorded later, because this will be posted on our YouTube page later, you can still email that address and someone will get back to you with an answer to your questions. But Superintendent, why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Josh. I really want to thank everybody that's taking time out of their busy schedules to tune in tonight. And we hope that tonight's presentation will give you some information and help you in your choices that you have to make. So first of all, let's talk about what it really is that's on the ballot. I really want to thank everybody that's taking time out of their busy schedules to tune in tonight. And so if we can take a look at the next slide, the presentation will give you some information and help you in your choices that you have to make. So first of all, let's talk about. Okay, having a little bit of technical feedback. There we go. So what's on the ballot is a combination levy that total 6.9 mils, but it's broken out into two separate segments. And it's very important to understand the distinction. So for both of these parts, it's just one vote. That includes a 5.4 mil operating levy, and the other half of it, or the other part of it rather, is a 1.5 mil permanent improvement levy. The permanent improvement levy is designed for capital improvements, repairs of buildings, maintenance, and that of the like. You know, you're talking about a lot of buildings within this district that are 50 years of age and older. And so there's a real need to take care of that investment for our taxpayers. You can see a priority maintenance plan. It's on our website. You can look at it at your leisure. It really identifies the most pressing issues, and we will work right down that list. And that's kind of what we use as we move forward. Also, the cost. For a $100,000 home market value, the cost per month is $20.13. We use the $100,000 figure because it's easy math to add the value of your own individual home. But you can also go to the auditor's website and find your own home value as well. We have a wonderful school district here at Forest Hills. And I think a lot of people understand that, appreciate that, people that have gone through the school systems. It is a true community here. It's not just a school system. It's a school system and a community with Anderson Township and the village of Newtown. Just recently, our elementaries have started an Adopt a Roadway campaign to help our area and work in partnership with Anderson Township. Last week, we had the privilege of seeing all of our second graders on a field trip to the Anderson Center, where they got to study, ask a lot of questions about how local government works. And if you've never been to the Anderson Center, I would encourage you to go here. They have in the basement area, they got a huge area that's designed to show you the history of Anderson Township, and our kids got to experience that. So that was pretty cool. I also think what makes us unique is such a huge volunteer base. We have parents and others that volunteer on an ongoing basis. Just this past board meeting last week, we were able to acknowledge some of those, just a few of the many, many wonderful volunteers that we have in our school system. Our schools are high quality. Both of our high schools, Anderson and Turpin, are in the top 5% of high schools. And this is, we know that they're good, but the U.S. News and World Report also has recognized them as this high quality. All 6 of our elementary schools are Hall of Fame schools. This is identified by the Ohio Association of Educational School Administrators. We also just last week, I want to say last Wednesday, were recognized again as one of the best communities for music education, as well as the Ohio PBS Network recognizing our school district as a district of excellence in PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Intervention Support Systems.
One of the questions we get often is why levy and why now? Our district is currently in deficit spending because as our expenditures rise with inflation, our revenues from voted levies remain flat. We are not exempt here in the school district from inflationary increases in items such as utilities, maintenance, fuel, and increases for our highly performing staff. However, 70.5% of our general fund revenues come directly from property taxes, and House Bill 920 prevents these voted levies from rising with inflation as our property values increase. So Josh, if you could call up a report that I received from Hamilton County Auditor, I'd like to share this with our residents that shows how House Bill 920 actually works. The chart you see there on your screen has a list of all Forest Hills levies. And what you see there is the total millage. And that is in column, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In column 5, what you see there is almost 73 mills of total millage. However, as property values go up, the next column, which is labeled the reduction factor, reduces the millage that is charged against those property values to, in our case, 38.89 mills, so that property revenues remain the same as when the levy was passed. So again, House Bill 920, as property values goes up, millage goes down, so the same amount of taxes is raised. It's not unusual for school districts in the state of Ohio to be on the ballot. Typically, it's a cycle of every 3 to 5 years. And of course, since we have a levy on the ballot, and at all times, we like to demonstrate fiscal responsibilities to our community. And one of the best ways to do that is through the CUP report. The CUP report is a document that's prepared by the Ohio Department of Education, and it has more than 60 data variables on it. And it also includes not only Forest Hills statistics, but 2 columns of comparison data, one for 20 similar districts, 20 districts that look most like us out of the 612 school districts in the state of Ohio, and also one for state average statistics. Throughout our time over the last couple of months sharing district information, we've been using the 21 CUP report because the 22 CUP report was released very late. Typically, this report is released in December, but this year it was just released a couple of weeks ago. So Josh, if you could call up the comparison, we do have a comparison of what the statistics we've been using since the report came out. What you see here is you see Hamilton County average cost per pupil, the state average cost per pupil, and Forest Hill's cost per pupil. You see both for our school year 21 and our school year 22. If you look at the Hamilton County average, you see that it's increased by over 10%. The state average has increased by over 9%. And Forest Hills has managed to hold our spending to just an increase of only just a little over 3%. The other chart that I like to use to demonstrate fiscal compliance or fiscal responsibility has 4 different data points on it. And Josh, if you could pull that up, what you see on the first chart of data points is our residential tax rate. And we talked just a few moments ago about how that's computed and that it has been reduced to an effective rate of 38.89 mils. And what you can see there is the residential tax rates for all 22 school districts in Hamilton County. And you can see the Hamilton County average, and that average is 11% more than the Forest Hills average. The second data chart is the cost per pupil that we talked about off the CUP report. And again, you can see Forest Hills is spending in the 18th position out of 22 school districts. And the average school district in Hamilton County spends 20% more than we do. The next chart, though, shows the percentage of every dollar that is spent directly in the classroom. And you can see Forest Hills spends 74 cents out of every dollar directly in the classroom, which is much higher than the Hamilton County average. But the last chart is where Forest Hills really shines, and that's in performance. That's where we're at the top of the chart instead of at the bottom of the chart in spending. And as you can see, we are 20 points higher in the performance index, which measures state testing. To take a look at the next chart, which is one of my favorites, and of course that's return on investment. And that shows the intersection between performance and cost. And as you can see, looking at this chart, where you want to be is in the upper left-hand quadrant. That is where the high-performing, low-cost districts are. And as you can see, the only districts that perform higher than Forest Hills actually have a higher cost per pupil, and many districts that perform a lot lower than Forest Hills spend a lot more. So I think that's one of the things that we're very proud of in the district, and our residents deserve is a high-performing district at a moderate and low cost.
Thank you, Alana. That's outstanding. It's a great bang for the buck. You know, I think what's also important for people to understand that our goal here is to be efficient as we possibly can with taxpayer dollars while still delivering a high level of performance in the classroom and support for all of our students. Regardless of what happens in May, we're tightening our belt here as well. $750,000 in reductions prior to next school year will happen. But I don't want you to think that this is something new. Just since 2018, this district has reduced $2.7 million out of its general fund expenditures. So going forward, we will always analyze every year on an ongoing basis, are we spending our money wisely and are we being efficient with our taxpayer dollars? So what does it mean if the levy passes? You know, what does that mean? Well, first of all, it means that we can maintain our current educational standings and we can continue to be in that upper left-hand quadrant that Alana had shown us in the previous diagram. We're not looking to add additional programs. We want what we have. We feel very good about what we're doing for our children. We feel very good about the programs that we offer at this quality for our kids. It also means keeping our class sizes at this basic standard level that we're at currently. It also means that we're going to continue to offer music as well as the same level to our gifted programs. I've got media program down there, but I'll be honest with you. Libraries and media centers aren't what they used to be. At Forest Hills, this is one of the places where we really integrate in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to our kids. It is one of the neatest things that we have got going, and it would be a shame not to continue to have that offering for our children. It will also address the critical maintenance and repair needs for our district. The PI portion of the levy is set aside, and this money can only be used for those capital improvement projects. These are things that have an estimated life or usefulness of 5 years or more. It's not anything exciting, but it's the stuff that we have to take care of. We have 9 school buildings that we just have to take care of. And the majority of those buildings are over 50 years of age. And so, guess, just like your home, you have to take care of it. You're talking about building updates, HVAC systems, roofs, parking lot, asphalt, buses, technology, to just mention a few of those things. If it fails, we have a pretty good chunk that we have to reduce. We're not allowed to just keep on the same track. We have to find reductions. It does not eliminate the need for a levy. So make sure you understand that even if it fails, it doesn't eliminate the need that we'll have to come back for money. It's just the way funding is in Ohio. But it's going to impact the size of our classes. Okay, when you reduce teachers, it's going to increase class sizes, particularly in core subject areas, the mathematics, science, social studies, and English. It's going to impact our ability for our teachers, especially like in elementary, where they have the ability to collaborate at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day because they're on the same time schedule. That's not possible now. So it will impact the ability for personalized learning and curriculum across the grade levels. It's also going to reduce our support services. We're going to have fewer students that are going to be able to take advantage of reading specialists per se. Our elementary gifted program will have to be redesigned. It'll just look different. Probably less pull-out instruction and restructuring of the grade level delivery. We're also going to have to lose some of our case coordinators, specifically at the secondary level, and these people are very involved in the IEP process and special education responsibilities. They don't go away. It just means our administrators are going to have to take on more of that burden to provide those services. So I do want you to know that there's a place that you can go for accurate information. Okay, it's information on the levy, what it is and how much, some of the same stuff you heard, and even some more detail. All you do is go to our website. There's going to be this little red box up here, and you see it circled on your diagram. Just click it and then start researching on your own. Certainly want to thank everybody for that, and thank everybody for tuning in. I think we're going to go ahead and start moving towards some questions potentially here.
Yep, that's right. Just to reiterate for folks who weren't tuned in right at the beginning, or I know we may have had an audio issue before we got into the presentation when I was speaking. If you have questions, you can send them to the email at the bottom of the screen, contact@foresthills.edu. And we're just going to spend the rest of our time here, the next 20-25 minutes or so, looking at questions that have already been submitted to this email account. And if questions come in while we're talking now, we can take a look at some of those. But we will take away this screen here, and we will start our first question. several different times from several different people as we've been doing talks like this throughout the community. It's about enrollment, and this one we'll send to Alana first. So basically people are asking about our enrollment, how that impacts our staff, our programs, how much we're spending on items. Is enrollment declining? How much it's declining? So we'll have Alana Cropper, our treasurer, talk about that and provide some clarity there.
Thanks, Josh. The 5-year forecast projection is based on past trends in enrollment that are applied to future years. From our fiscal year 16 through our last complete fiscal year 22, enrollment declined on an average of about 29 students per year. So that is the number that the forecast has applied to future years. If the district experiences a decline of 29 students per year moving forward, it will take many years for that number to be significant enough to impact necessary staffing levels. Think about that number, 29, spread across all 9 buildings and all 12 grades. It's only 2.4 students per year per grade level. One other thing that I think it's important to note, the enrollment count in the forecast does not include preschool students and counts all kindergartners as 1/2 of a student, even if they're enrolled in all-day kindergarten. That's because the state-based cost funding enrollment does not include preschool students in all-day kindergarten count. That's a difference of almost 400 students that we regularly see in our classroom every day that is not included in the state funding enrollment counts.
Okay. Thank you, Alana. One of the next questions we've got a few different times as well. Will anyone receive raises if the levy passes? So maybe Superintendent Hook can start us off on that one.
Okay. Thanks, Josh. Let me pull my crystal ball out here and see if I can answer that. But all seriousness, and joking aside, but being serious, Forest Hills, like every other public school district in the state of Ohio, almost all, I think there's one, maybe two, have unions, and we enter into negotiations as determined by the contracts that we have with them. We're required by Ohio law to bargain in good faith. And so our contracts, we have 3 groups here, 2 OPSI groups that represent our classified unions and personnel, and then of course our teachers union. So yes, we will be negotiating with them, but where that goes is really part of the process of sitting down at the table with them and in good faith trying to determine what's appropriate.
And I know, Alana, some of these questions that you've gotten and I've gotten ask about some of the numbers in the 5-year forecast. So if you want to talk a little bit about the 5-year forecast, I'll share my screen and pull up on the website where people can see that they can pull it up and look for it themselves, if that sounds good.
Absolutely. Yes, we both have gotten questions from people who are looking closely at the forecast, and I'm absolutely glad that people are still reading it when they get to page 14. So that's a good thing. But when you look at page 14 in the forecast, all those increases that are to the salary line do not relate to actual increase in staff salaries, but instead they are related to the end of our COVID funding. In earlier years, in our fiscal year 2021, 2022, and for a small part of 2023, the district was able to use some COVID funding, actually $6.6 million of COVID funds, to pay salaries that would have typically been funded by our general fund and therefore in the 5-year forecast. However, those COVID expenditures do not appear in the 5-year forecast. So it certainly makes earlier years look like the increase in salaries was lower than it should have been, and it makes later years look like the increase is higher than it actually was. So when the salary expenses were moved out in 2021, the personnel expenses in the forecast on page 14 actually show a negative 0.6% decrease. But by converse, after we finished using those expenditures in fiscal years 23 and 24, we were out of COVID funds, and those expenditures return to the general fund. Once those expenditures return to the general fund, the increase looks a little bit larger than it is just for salary and staff raises. But if you look at the actual increase over since the time of last levy through the projected increase in 2027, the actual average annual increase per year is 3.4%.
All right, thank you, Treasurer Cropper. We'll let you
our motion detector lights went out.
And
that's us trying to just be conservative and lower our electric bill.
Apologize. Yes, evidently I'm not moving enough to keep the lights on.
So this next question we've gotten with this year being a reappraisal year for the Hamilton County Auditor. Many people have actually reached out to ask the number that's on our website that Superintendent Hook you spoke about in the presentation. Does that change next year because of the change in home values based on the appraisals that are going to be happening?
Well, if I understand the question correct, Josh, will you pay, or will your levy costs, or the results of the levy, will your taxes go up as your house is reassessed at a higher value? For all intents and purposes, I see no reason at this point in time why home values won't increase. But that, again, if you remember back to what Alana was talking about in House Bill 920, that when this passes in May, okay, then there's a wall put on the amount of money that can be collected. Okay, so if your house assessed at a higher level, okay, as probably most will, then the auditor will automatically put a reduction factor on and lower the millage amount. Okay, so even though let's say we pass at 6.9 mils, the likelihood, based on the current trends as we see right now, when collections begin in 23, January of 23, it'll be less than 6.9 mils because the auditor will have had to apply the reduction factor. And so reappraisals happen every 6 years, and then in between there's an update. So that would happen at any one of those intervals.
Gotcha. The next question related to the Permanent Improvement Fund as it stands now. Question for Treasurer Cropper. If looking at the fund, there's $2.7, $2.8 million in the fund now. Why can't that be used to make some of those fixes on the priority maintenance plan that's on the website? What is that? The deal with that money there?
Yeah, Josh. And actually, today I took a look at the Permanent Improvement Fund. It actually has around $2.8 million in it. But unfortunately, not all those funds can be used for roofs or even for items on our preventive maintenance schedule. The Permanent Improvement Fund contains several different cost centers, which are required by board action or existing contracts to be spent on specific areas. So those funds cannot be used for the roofs or for items on the preventive maintenance schedule. So out of that 2.8 that exists in there today, $500,000 of that is already earmarked, and POs have been let for projects this summer. An additional $812,000 is the source of which were rental fees on our turf fields, and that is set aside for turf field replacement. And we have another 128 thousand that has been fundraised for Titus Auditorium improvements, and that money is restricted to be used on Titus Auditorium. So we do have 1.3 million available right now in our permanent improvement needs. We do like to keep a slight balance in there for any crisis or unexpected boiler breakage or anything that happens unexpected in the district that we would need that for. It's important to note that even if we were to spend all that on roofs today, it would not take care of the amount of roofing needs we have. The priority maintenance plan shows roofing needs currently at 2.7 million. And also the entirety of the preventive maintenance plan is over $12 million. So the balance certainly is not high enough to take care of that, and does demonstrate the need for the levy.
Sure, and I'm just pulling up the priority maintenance plan so folks see it and know what it looks like. This is on our informational levy page as well, and like you said, it details quite a few things that need to be addressed in the coming years. So that's where people can find that on the informational levy page if they have other questions or things like that. The next
Let me quickly add to that with this levy, the 1.5 mils of permanent improvement is not categorized into a specific piece. It can be used for any of those capital item needs that you just listed, Josh.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Good point.
Moving on to the next question. This one, this individual raising concerns for herself about consolidation that has come up in the fall and the thought of rebuilding or replacing the Anderson pool. This person's wondering if there's a failsafe that guarantees the levy funds may only be used to fund existing costs and educational programs for the operating levy, or the district's most urgent capital improvement needs for the permanent improvement levy, and those were the language that's used in some of our FAQ sheets that are on the website.
Okay. Well, great question. A lot in there. I'll take a little chunk at a time, but what I can tell you is that the levy amounts that we're asking for, we spent a lot of time on and a lot of man hours, not just me, but our entire administrative staff looking at this. And what I can tell you is the amount we're asking for is will support all 9 school buildings in our district. As for the Anderson pool, we're also looking at some other creative and innovative ways to fund that project and other projects like that. But that maybe not on the high priority in terms of the PI levy, but we haven't forgot about that. We're looking at some creative ways.
Sure. And we'll jump to another question for Superintendent Hook. I'm just going to read this quote that was submitted from a person. As a taxpayer, I feel blindsided that our schools are in financial trouble. Mr. Hook, you are not responsible, but how did we get here?
Wow. Well, first of all, let me say this first. The issues that we're dealing with aren't about how did we get here so much as it's really an issue and a problem with school funding in Ohio. If it weren't, you wouldn't have seen it go to the Supreme Court, 4 different times over the last couple of decades. And so it's really a problem with the funding mechanism. School districts like Forest Hills that are a little bit that are higher in property value, and therefore the state sees it as a wealthier district compared to other districts in Ohio. it just puts you on this cycle that you have to pass a millage rate where you can reserve some money for a first couple of years so that as you project forward and you get into deficit spending, you've reserved some money to go a couple of more years. And so what you're experiencing and seeing is not unusual. There are 13 other school districts just in the Southwest Ohio that are also have operating issues on the ballot. So it's more of a question of not mismanagement, but it's more of a question of funding in Ohio. I think we're trying to do things the right way here. We're tightening our belt, as we mentioned earlier, and really that will be an ongoing theme moving forward, that we will always look for efficiencies in our budgeting.
Sure. This next one is a question we'll give to Treasurer Cropper. This person asks, do my tax dollars go toward all of the signs, website, and literature posted around town?
No district dollars are used for any political campaign purposes. All the signs and literature advocating for the passage of the levy that you've seen around town are paid by the citizens for Forest Hills. The school district website is only used to provide factual information on the levy and cannot advocate for the passage of this ballot issue.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And this question here, we'll get another question. You've said this one will go to Superintendent Hook.
Okay.
You've said that if the levy does not pass, the district will cut costs by starting school days earlier and increasing class sizes. Does that really make a difference? Can you speak to what effect those changes have on student learning and performance based on your experience as an educator?
Well, the short answer is yes, and absolutely is the second part of that. As with any reduction, you have to look at the cost and the benefits. Certainly, the first part of it dealt with start times, school days, and I believe on our website you can actually pull up those actual times. But by and large, what we're doing is pushing the start time up about 25 minutes or so for the high schools, and then you have to back up some of the elementary schools to go later. So everybody's going to slide 10 to 15 to 20 minutes or so approximately, but those actual times you can see on our website. And why does that save us money? Number one, it reduces the number of bus drivers that we really have. Instead of running 3 tiers where we go out, pick up students, bring them back, that's 1 tier. We go out again, bring them back, that's 2 tiers. You do it a third time. Okay, so now if you add a 4th time, okay, so that the buses have time enough to drop the kids off, go out and pick up another group and bring them back, you just have to spread your times out. So yes, advantage is you're saving money. The disadvantage is you're starting earlier for some kids and you're starting later for some other kids at the other end of the spectrum. And so there's some research out there about start times, especially for teenagers. I think a lot of people will agree that teenagers need more than 8 hours of sleep, and it's best for their academic success. And so it's a cost benefit you have to weigh, and unfortunately we have to keep our doors open. I think the other part of that dealt with class sizes. Well, yes, absolutely. The class sizes do matter. More so as the younger you are, the smaller your class sizes need to be. Okay, as you matriculate up through the grade levels, we don't ever really want to get above 25, 26 students, and that's kind of anytime you start moving above that, it starts impacting students. It eliminates the ability for teachers to provide one-on-one help. smaller help, that kind of thing. And I know there's an argument to sit here and go, well, when I was in college, we had a class, my class had 100 kids in it. Yeah, but you were all paying tuition. People wanted to be there, and they're older. When you deal with younger kids, and we deal with everybody, okay, it just isn't the same thing. Our kids, kids need the one-on-one attention at times and support when they're not understanding a concept. And when you start pushing above 24 to 26 students at the upper levels, it does have an impact.
This next question we've got is regarding state funding. So we'll give this one to Treasurer Cropper. How has the state budget for public education changed in recent years, and what effect has it had on the district's general fund? Has that had any effect, positive or negative, on the need for a levy?
Well, unfortunately, the state budget has not kept pace with inflation either. In fiscal year 19, the state provided 32% of our general fund budget. This past year, as we've discussed before, they've only provided 26.5%. So again, that puts a greater burden on our local taxpayer to make up the difference to pay for those inflationary increases. So absolutely, it has an effect on the size and the timing of levies.
This next question was regarding the last levy that the district had in 2019.
Okay.
Superintendent Hook, I think you can
Sure.
speak to this. I know you weren't here, but the last levy passed in 2019 had the goal of making repairs and updating systems. How can it be that everything is in disrepair in just 4 years?
Okay. Well, I did spend a lot of time researching forest hills. So what I can tell you is this. First of all, in 2019, that was an operating issue. It was not about permanent improvement. So it was really about the operations of the school district at the time. So it did not address anything in terms of physical repairs, maintenance, any of that. It was just really about operations. The last time anything was addressed about facilities would have been the 2014 bond issue. There was a small portion, only a $500,000 that was passed with that. Right now that's just not enough. And to be honest with you, the Anderson roof was not included in the 2014 bond issue. So we have a lot of catching up to do with our facilities. It's important for us to focus on that, and the need is very high. So it's not that, everything went into disrepair in 4 years. It's been quite some time. And as I mentioned before, the majority of our buildings are over 50 years of age.
We've got a couple minutes left. We did start, I think, about 5 minutes late, so we'll go for a few more minutes, try and squeeze in some of these other questions. This one for Treasurer Cropper. I've heard some people say that Forest Hill School District is heavy with too many non-teacher administrators. What percentage of funds are spent on classroom instruction? How does that compare to other districts throughout the region and state?
Well, as we saw on the earlier charts, Forest Hill spends 74 cents or 74% of our budget directly in the classroom, and that is 2% higher percentage than Hamilton County. The average of Hamilton County districts that spend around 72 cents per dollar, and it's a lot higher than the state average, which is around 86%. So the converse of that is we only spend 26% of our budget on non-classroom items, which includes administrators and support staff. So that 26% is compared to the average school district in the state that spends 32. So I would say those statistics point to the fact that we are right-sized in terms of our administrators.
We'll get this question in here. This is about school safety and there any levy funds or funds in general or plans set aside to add another resource officer to the district, or are there plans in place to improve safety for children and students going forward? So I think Superintendent Hook can probably speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Josh. A lot in that question. There have been quite a lot of improvements to safety in the Forest Hill School District already. I do want to mention that in this earlier this year, the state of Ohio offered an opportunity for school districts to apply for a grant, a safety grant, in which we were awarded $500,000 to make safety improvements. These were not for salaries for SROs, but actually it allows us to update and add security cameras to most places throughout the district. Allows us to improve those surveillance technologies. There's some other measures that we're adding to increase the security at our entrances and to make those more secure. Governor DeWine recently, a few weeks ago, was discussing in his biennial budget approach and proposal to add funding for additional school resource officers, which, at the time really excited me because we have one SRO in our district, and he's a good one for sure. Officer Wolf has done an outstanding job, and we appreciate him. But certainly, that's a lot of territory to cover for one case, and we'd love to see more. Unfortunately, that piece of the biennial budget was removed, I believe, by the House here just last week in their revisions to the biennial budget. And obviously, it goes over to the Senate now, and they'll have a concurrence and stuff. And so we're hopeful. We're watching it. I'd love to see that piece added back in. I see that as a critical piece for us. We're certainly looking at alternative funding opportunities that would assist us because we'd certainly like to have a little more help there.
Okay. I think that will be a good time to end it. We want to be cognizant of everybody's time, and we thank everybody who tuned in. I'm going to show, just as we say goodbye, the Levy Informational webpage here. This is, as Mr. Hook said, on the front page of the website. You can find a button to click here. You'll find a lot more information that we weren't able to talk about. So that is a good resource for folks who have additional questions. For any questions we didn't address in this presentation, someone from the district will respond with information there. We'll share some of those questions online as well, and on this section of the site, and some FAQ sheets. So we'll have that information available there. And I think to Superintendent, Treasurer, do you guys have any final thoughts before we say goodnight?
Well, just want to say thank you for everybody for tuning in. And thank you to those people that'll be watching later on a recorded version of it. So as Josh had mentioned, you can certainly send you any other questions in. We will try to post every one of the questions that were presented that we didn't get to on our website as well. We are excited about what's going on in Forest Hills. We believe that we've got great school district, and one that we've got some big decisions to make on May 2nd. So it really comes down to what people want for their school district in the community that they live.
Josh, I too want to thank our community for taking the time to send in questions and watch this informational video. I think this is a fabulous community, and I'm proud to be the treasurer here. And I, again, want just to thank them for their time this evening.
Great. All right. As we said, this will be recorded. This will be available on the any additional questions, just email that contact at foresthills.edu, and